The year is 1629. The Batavia, a brand new flagship of the Dutch East India Company, is a floating city of wealth. She is sailing from the Netherlands to the East Indies. In her hold, she carries 12 chests of silver coins, priceless jewels, and cargo worth a modern fortune. On her decks, 342 people, soldiers, sailors, wealthy merchants, and their families. They are the image of a new global empire, civilized, powerful, rich. They are sailing toward a paradise of spice and silk. They were, in fact, sailing into a nightmare. On the 4th of June, in the dead of night, the ship slams into an unseen coral reef, 40 miles off the coast of a barren, unknown land, Western Australia. The Batavia is torn apart. The story should have been one of tragedy and survival. A brave captain, a desperate journey for help, a fight against the sea. That is a story, but it is not the story. The official story of the Batavia is a shipwreck. The real story is what happened after the ship sank. It is a story of what happens when the thin veneer of civilization is ripped away and the monsters that lurk beneath are set free. It is a story that the Dutch East India Company tried to bury. Now let's go back to that reef, because the ship is breaking up, the survivors are on the beach, and the most dangerous man you've never heard of is about to take charge. In the chaos of the wreck, about 280 survivors made it to a series of tiny, waterless, windswept islands, the Houtman Abrolhos. They were desolate, flat, and offered nothing. The commander of the fleet, Francisco Pelsaert, and the ship's captain, Ariane Jacobsoen, made a decision. They, along with 46 others, would take the ship's longboat and attempt an impossible journey. They would sail 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers, north across the open ocean to the fortress of Batavia, modern-day Jakarta, to get help. This is the heroic story, and it was heroic. They made it. In 33 days, they arrived, half dead, and organized a rescue mission. But the real story, the one that matters, is what happened to the 220 people they left behind. They left them with no ship, no real authority, and no hope. And they left them in the hands of a man named Geronimus Cornelis. Cornelis was the under-merchant. He was an apothecary by trade, a charismatic, well-educated man. He was also a failed businessman, a heretic follower of a dark new philosophy, and a psychopath. Before the shipwreck, Cornelis and the captain had been planning a mutiny. They were going to seize the ship, kill the merchants, and turn pirate. The shipwreck had only delayed his plan. Now, instead of stealing a ship, he would build a kingdom. Pelsaert had left behind a man with no authority, but Cornelis created it. His first move was brilliant and cold. He gathered all the weapons and all the food under his control. Then he formed a council of his loyal mutineers. His second move, divide and conquer. He saw a group of soldiers, led by a man named Wiebbe Hayes. They were loyal. They were a threat. So Cornelis tricked them. He told Hayes to take his 20 men to a different, nearby island. He told them to search for water and light signal fires if they found it. He promised to send supplies. It was a lie. He was stranding them, hoping they would starve. With the last of the good men gone, Geronimus Cornelis was now the undisputed king of a barren rock. And that's when the cleansings began. His new philosophy was simple. The weak, the sick, and the useless had no place in his new world. They were a drain on resources. He and his mutineers started with the sick. They rowed them out on rafts and drowned them. Then they moved to those who complained. Their throats were slit in the night. But it wasn't just about survival. It was about power. Cornelis, dressed in the fine silk robes he'd salvaged from the wreck, declared a new law, the law of the strong. He abolished marriage. All women were now the collective property of his men. He kept the beautiful Lucretia van den Meilen, a high-born passenger, for himself as his personal concubine. The other women were passed around, enduring nightmare on a daily basis. One woman, the pastor's wife, dared to speak out against him. He had her and her children drowned. In 12 weeks, Geronimus Cornelis and his small band of followers, fewer than 40 men, murdered over 125 men, women, and children. This was not a fight for survival. This was systematic extermination. It was a cult, led by a man who had been waiting his whole life for the world to end, just so he could build his own. If you believe that history is a warning, then hit that subscribe button. Because the story's not over. But Cornelis had made one mistake. On the other island, Wiebbe Hayes and his soldiers had not starved. They had found water, and, incredibly, they had found food in the form of wallabies. They were surviving. Survivors from Cornelis's island, those who had escaped the massacres, began swimming across the channel, telling Hayes of the horror. Wiebbe Hayes realized the truth. He wasn't a search party, he was the resistance. His men, armed only with homemade clubs and pikes made from salvaged barrel hoops, prepared for war. When Cornelis, realizing his rivals were still alive, launched an attack, Hayes and his men won. They fought off the mutineers who had muskets with pure, desperate courage. And then on the horizon, a sail. It was Pelsaert, the rescue ship. A race began. Who would get to the ship first? Cornelis to lie and claim he was the victim, or Hayes to tell the truth? Wiebbe Hayes won that race. He reached Pelsaert first. The truth came out. The reckoning was swift. The mutineers were rounded up. Pelsaert, horrified, convened a court-martial on the islands themselves. Geronimus Cornelis, the apothecary king, was not allowed a quick death. Both of his hands were chopped off. Then he was hanged. His chief lieutenants met the same fate. The official story of the Batavia is a shipwreck. The real story is a 12-week experiment in human depravity. It's Lord of the Flies, but it wasn't children. It was us. The Dutch East India Company got its silver back. But it also got a report, Pelsaert's journal, so horrifying that it became a dark legend. They didn't build a monument to the victims, they just tried to forget. But history is not about what we try to forget, it's about what we are forced to remember. The Batavia is not a story about a ship. It's a story about the ocean of darkness that exists right beneath the surface of civilized men. If you believe that the darkest truths are the ones that most need to be told, subscribe and keep the past alive.